have given this fellowship, not just this morning, but over the last nearly 200 years, given us sufficient for what we needed. So we ask now for your wisdom, that we will be wise stewards of everything here that people give through the bank and all sorts of other ways. In your name, amen.
Amen. Well, seems a while since I was stood here, but it's good to be back. I heard you had 3 bad sermons while I were away. Well, that's what somebody told me, especially Ashley's, because he'll watch this later. Jonathan's, I believe, was okay, but Ashley's were a bit dodgy, I heard. No, I listened to them all, they were all good, so don't worry, I don't mean that. While I was away, I could have got up at the sharing time, but I decided not to. I decided to do it now. Over the weeks I've been away, God's been doing all sorts of things. Miracles that you can't believe. One of them was, one Monday, I'd forgotten to tell Anne that I didn't need Dave on the Monday. And so Dave turned up at the manse to help me out, and now we're having to take Ellen to the hospital. But before I had to go to the hospital, I had to go down to the pharmacy to pick up Ellen's repeat prescriptions. So instead of writing everything out that she takes, we just take the prescriptions with us, which makes life so much easier. And so I said, I'll take you home at the same time, Dave. So me and Dave set off, went down to the shops at the bottom, to the pharmacy, and one of the girls from the cafe was walking across the square, and she shouted me. She said, "John, we've got this lady, and she's supposed to be doing a course for disabled people, but nobody knows where it is. The bus driver has just dropped her off here, and she doesn't know where she's going. Are you running any courses up at church?" And I said, "Well, not that I know of, but I don't know." I said, "Realise might be doing something." She said, "Oh, I'll go back in the shop, we'll ring Realise." So we went to the pharmacy, and I got the prescriptions. And so I said to Dave on the way back, we'll just go in the coffee shop, make sure everything's all right. So we go in the coffee shop, and there's this disabled lady there, didn't know where she was going. They managed to get in touch with Realise. Apparently it was Realise where she was supposed to be going, but the bus had just dropped her off at the coffee shop area. She'd come all the way from Halifax. She hadn't a clue where she was, but God was so good, because normally I wouldn't be down there on a Monday. And so me and Dave said, "Just jump in my car and we'll take you up there." So we were able to bring her up to where she should be. Now, to me, that's just God having his hand on things, because normally, as I say, wouldn't have gone down there at all. And if we'd have been taking Ellen, Dave hadn't come, I would have put Ellen in the car when it was time to go to the hospital and then gone to the pharmacy, which meant we would miss this lady. But because Dave turned up, and I'd forgotten to tell Anne that Dave wasn't needed that day, it all worked out right for this lady. That was one of the things that happened while I've been away. And as you know, I've been revamping the kitchen at the manse. And we had to make 1 or 2 alterations to the design I'd been given, because when we're taking the old kitchen out, we found out we got more room than what we used to have, for one reason or another. and I was wondering what to do. And you know, God gave me a dream. And He showed me exactly how the kitchen should be. So I went down that morning, looked at it, changed things around, and believe it or not, things started to fit in place. That was one morning. And then I was stuck with another problem in the kitchen, and guess what? I got another dream. Went down in the morning, did exactly what I'd seen in the dream, and it fit perfectly. No problem whatsoever. So, sad to say, up until present, I've always had visions. Old men dream dreams. But it's amazing how God is interested in our lives. To give me a dream on how to sort out the problem in the kitchen is amazing. And we've ended up with much more space because of the dreams. So it's a miracle. I have also had the fortunate time to be able to go to the coffee shop on a Wednesday. I've kept doing that because I felt it were important. And the number of people I've been able to sit and just listen to, and they've been saying, well, we don't know about this or about that. And just say, well, have you thought about doing this? And that's important. I was down at the coffee shop this week, and I do need you to pray because they're going to have a psychic evening down there, which is not good. It's people on the estate have asked for it, and because it's a public space, that's why they're doing it. It's a public space. It's not a religious space. But Ursula, who runs the coffee shop, came to me and said, I know you don't agree with this, John. She says, but will you come down after the psychic's been in? Because we might need to clear this place out. So she realises that there's a problem bringing the psychic in, and she's asked me to go down and pray for the whole coffee shop after the psychic's been in. Which is quite a tremendous thing. So on I think it's 27th in it, Sam, if I remember rightly, 27th of this month, we need to be praying for protection over the coffee shop and that area. Okay, and for the people that end up going to this event. And we need to pray that the lady that's running the event doesn't get anything, and it becomes a real mockery of an event, because that would be a real sign to the people on the estate. So just be aware of that. But God's working, because He's working. Don't be worried about the psychic event. What got to me was more than anything else, and lifted me up. I was a bit miffed that they were doing a psychic event, but the great thing was that Ursula came to me and said, will you come down afterwards and pray over the coffee shop? That's the main thing, that we're starting to get recognised that we can change things. We are not just a dormant church. We can change things. We can change people's lives. And that's, to me, is important. That we get behind that we can change people's lives. And it's great. Now, what they don't realise down at the coffee shop also is that we've also got a conference on here that weekend. And I will be telling the conference what's going on at the coffee shop. And there's one or two people that have been specially trained that will be coming to the coffee shop, including our own Jonathan, about events like this. And we might go down there and just be outside and praying for them. But we just need to be aware that things like that are happening. But I think it's interesting that God's holding a conference here. And I say God's holding a conference because it is his conference. And what I will remind people is something that I said on Monday, a meeting here on Monday, is that we are not home church. It might be a branding we've got, but we are God's church. It's not St. Christopher's church, it is God's church. It is not Salvation Army, it is God's church. It is not Gateway, it is God's church. We are one family. We as human beings put titles over things. But you know, we are part of the church of God. We are part of God's world. This world belongs to him. And we tend to forget that because we put labels over things. Home church. So we're home church. Well, we're not. That's just the label for the building. We are part of God's global church. Wherever you go in the world, you'll meet some of your family. No matter where you're going, you'll meet part of your family if you go to a building where it says, we're a church. But we are God's church and we work together. I'm going to look at Deuteronomy to start with this morning. Good book. And this is looking at Moses and him handing on the baton. See, I set before you today life, prosperity, death, and destruction. For I command you today to love the Lord your God, to walk in obedience to him, and to keep his commands, decrees, and laws. Then you will live and increase, and the Lord your God will bless you in the land you are entering to possess. But if your heart turns away and you are not obedient, and if you are drawn away to bow down to other gods and worship them, I declare to you this day that you will certainly be destroyed. You will not live long in the land you are crossing the Jordan to enter and possess. Should be another 2, I think, Hilary. This day I call the heavens and the earth and witness against you that I have set before you life and death, blessing and curse. Now choose life so that you and your children may live, and that you may love the Lord your God. Listen to his voice and hold fast to him, for the Lord is your life, and he will give you many years in the land he swore to give to your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And if we can go on to the next Deuteronomy readings, which is Deuteronomy 31. Then Moses went out and spoke these words to all Israel. I am now 120 years old, and I am no longer able to lead you. The Lord has said to me, you shall not cross the Jordan. The Lord your God himself will cross over ahead of you. He will destroy those nations before you, and you will take possession of their land. Joshua also will cross over ahead of you, as the Lord said. And the Lord will do to them what he did to Sihon and Og, the kings of the Amorites who he destroyed, along with their land. I'm going to leave it there for a moment. This is Moses preparing to hand on the baton. He's 120 years old. So if you're thinking you're getting old, you best think again. 120, and he's giving up the baton. I am no longer able to lead you, so I'm passing the baton on. It doesn't say I'm no longer going to work for God, but I'm no longer able to lead. He was also told that he couldn't cross over into the Jordan, into the promised land. Moses never made it to the promised land. Never saw what God had promised him or told him about all the way along. I will get my people to the promised land. I will give them a land of milk and honey. But Moses never made it there. He took the people all the way right to the point of where they could cross over. But he didn't go. Why? Because he was 120 years old and he'd done his job. He now had to go on to something different. And so he did. That's exactly what he did. He handed it on to somebody else. But the one thing he said before he handed it on was that God will go with you. Now, I've skipped to the end of the passage because I think you need to grasp the end of the passage that Moses is telling the people that God's going to go with them. But what has God just told them? If you do this, you will have life. And if you do not do that, you've got death and you're going to be cursed. God's given them a choice. If you do it, you'll be right. You will have a long prosperity in the land. But if you don't, there's going to be consequences. Now, lots of people come to me, why did God kick the Jews out of Israel? Why did he allow people to come in and take over the land when he'd given it to the Israelites? Well, it says so in this passage. He did exactly what he said he would do. If you do not follow me, if you go worship other gods, if you do not listen to my laws, or you do not follow my commandments, my laws and my decrees, then you'll be cast out. And what did the Jews start to do? They started to worship other gods. They started to walk away from God. And so they were cast out of the land that they'd been given. And I believe that that's still relevant today for us. God gives us a place to be. But if we do not follow his laws, his commandments, then he will cast us out. And we've got to be aware of that. God doesn't make idle threats. You know, I've known some parents say to the children, if you do that again, I'm going to give you a slap, a smack. I know I'm not politically correct these days, but this is way back when it was all right to smack your children. If you do that, you're going to get a smack. Or if you do that, there's going to be this consequence. But they don't follow it through. And then they wonder why the child thinks they can get away with anything. And then there's the parents that say the same thing and follow it through. If the child does something, there is a consequence. And the child learns. God is saying this so that we will learn. If we go wrong, there is a consequence. He's not just the parent that is correcting the child is doing the correction because they love them. They love that child so much that they want that child to be on the right path. They don't want it to be on the wrong path. And so there's this word of correction. And The correction's got to be followed through. If the correction's not followed through, the child goes off in a wayward way because they know they can get away with anything. And God's saying that to the church. If God says He's going to do something, you can guarantee He's going to do it. It is black and white, and when God says He's going to do it, people these days just go, "Oh, it's all right because we've got a loving God, and if we make a mistake, there's going to be no." Well, no, I'm sorry. There is going to be a consequence. If we make mistakes, if we go wrong, there is a consequence, and we have to know that. We live with a God that tells us, if we do not follow His ways, if we look at other gods, if we worship other gods, if we do not follow His laws, then there'll be a consequence. That doesn't mean to say we live under the law. Now, there is a difference. Because I know a lot of people will call what Paul says to us, that we no longer live under the law. And it's true what Paul says. We no longer live under the law, but we also live by the law because we live in Christ. So the law still is applicable even to us who know Jesus Christ. We are not exempt from the law. We just don't live under the law. Why don't we live under it? Because we're living by it. We live by the law, not under the law. And if we have to live under the law, then we don't know Christ. The law was put there to bring people back to God. The Ten Commandments were given so that the people would come back to God and they would understand what they had to do to stay in His presence. And the problem is, if we go away from the law, we have a problem. I'm going to read Matthew chapter 5, verse 17. And this is Jesus speaking. Do not think that I have come to abolish the law of the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. For truly I tell you, until heaven and earth disappear, not the smallest letter, not the least stroke of a pen will by any means disappear. For the law until everything is accomplished. Therefore, anyone who sets aside one of the least of these commands and teaches others to accordingly will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever practices and teaches these commands will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I tell you that unless your righteousness surpasses that of the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, you will certainly not enter the kingdom of heaven. This is Jesus speaking. He's telling us that the law cannot be wiped away until the earth has gone. And that's not going to happen until Jesus comes back. So the commandments in the Old Testament and the laws in the Old Testament are still relevant today. They have not been wiped away. We have no right to say we can abolish this law because the world has changed. That is God's area to do that, not man's. We cannot wipe away what God has given us. And too often we do, to make it comfortable for ourselves. But the world's changed today, so you can't say that anymore. But the world's changed today, so you can't do that anymore. I'm sorry, but that's not what Jesus says. And that's not what Paul says. And Paul's is often misquoted. Because when it says we no longer live under the law, people say, oh, well, that means that the law's been wiped away. It no longer is. It no longer exists. And it no longer matters to us. Because we don't live under the law. No, we don't live under it. It's like I said earlier, we live by it. Because if we love Jesus, we're going to live automatically by his laws. So we don't live under them. You only need to live under the law if you're doing things wrong. The law is there to keep us in line with God and keep our eyes upon him. So we need to look and keep our eyes firmly fixed on where the Lord is taking us. Because I believe that God has brought us to this land of promise. Right here in Homewood. I think this is a land of promise. I also I've been to another church to help them out with Lead Your Church into Growth this last month. And it was great because I went to speak with the elders because, first of all, you need to know that the church wants to do it. And the elders were really excited. They want their church to grow. And so they've invited me to go lead them through Lead Your Church into Growth Local. And, do you know, they want their church to grow. They want to live by the law. They want to see God growing. So their promised land is right where they are. Our promised land is right where we are. Why? Because this is where God sent us. Israel, where he sent the Israelites. Where he sent the Jewish people. Homewood is where he sent us. So our work is here in Homewood. But what have we got to do? We've got to keep our eyes firmly fixed upon God and not any other God. We don't worship any idols. We worship God and God alone. We don't wipe away any of God's laws or his commandments. Why? Because God gave us them. And Jesus said, I've not come to remove them. And so you will never hear me preach about removing the laws of God. Because I believe that we have to live by them. Not under them, but by them. We have to love those that are living under them and bring them back into the kingdom. But we have to be aware that we are living by the laws, not under them. If you keep the laws of this land, you do not get persecuted. You do not get sent to prison. And I'm not saying there aren't miscarriages of justice, because I know there are. But if you keep the laws of this land, you do not get punished. If you stick to the speed limit, you do not get a speeding fine. If you park in the right places, you do not get a parking ticket. And so you're living by the law and not getting punished. If you park in the wrong place or you speed, you get punished. So therefore you're under the law because you've been corrected. We are not under the law, but we live by the law. And if we want to move forward as a church, we have to keep our eyes firmly fixed upon God, because he's going to lead us. He's going to guide us. But if our eyes go off elsewhere, he's going to leave us. And so we need to keep our eyes firmly fixed upon him. Amen.
Thanks, John, for that. We're going to sing our last song in a minute. We say this every week. If you need prayer, please don't leave without somebody praying for you. You can, during the next hymn, come and sit on the front row, and then a couple of the elders will come and pray with you. I'm assuming there's tea and coffee through directly opposite. So we'll just have a last song, and then I'll close in prayer.